So that was a very nice welcome. I'm going to stare my students down, though, if nobody asks the questions. You're already prepared for that, right? It's very hard to go after such a good speaker, but I'm going to try anyway. So the problem today also is that the conflict is so complex that even experts say we cannot clearly mark which group is doing what. There's splitter groups, there's new groups forming. So be aware of that. So even if today you feel as a layman, be aware that even experts sometimes don't have a good overview because there's so many different groups and there's new groups emerging and there's new alliances forming all the time. We are looking at a conflict that is often labeled as the worst humanitarian catastrophe of our times. For me, every time I'm thinking of a war that is like unknown or like not looked at by the world, I'm thinking of Yemen. I'm thinking of pictures of starving children that look like skeletons. We probably all have those pictures in mind, and especially with the Ukrainian conflict now all over the news, it has us wonder like how such a conflict can be forgotten in such a way, or how at least I'm not tall enough. I can be like this, right? So we have this forgotten conflict where at the same time because experts also, it's not clear, right? In some conflicts that have two players that are clearly good and one player that is clearly evil are so much easier for us to understand. Although in the real world there is no conflict where one party is just evil and another party is just good. So when we look at it, we often say civil war. Cambridge Dictionary defines a civil war as a war between different factions, a war fought by different groups of people living in the same country. There's another term sometimes coming up, that is proxy war. So what is a proxy war? So Cambridge Dictionary defines a proxy war as a war between groups or smaller countries that each represent the interest of other larger powers and may have help or support from this. So my students know I'm pretty much always about like those definitions and let's look at categories and classify. I think today this can be a little bit help to understand why the war is so complex. Because on one hand, it's not just a civil war, right? There are elements of proxy wars. We have lots of outside parties interfere. We have Iran, we have Saudi Arabia, we have the Emiratis having an interest, we have Germany, we have the European Union. So we have like all these different parties that might engage in proxy activities because there's a lot of money to be made with weapons, to be honest. We love diplomacy, but there's not much money in diplomacy, right? The weapon industry does get a lot of money, unfortunately. And then the thing is also that some weapons don't get easily destroyed, right? Once we put a weapon into the world, it's likely to kill somebody. So even more important is today our conference today, because we are going to talk about what else can we do? What then? To be honest, I don't have a real answer. One of the aspects, obviously, is that from the outsider's perspective, often we now saw that with BBC openly said that, right? Those uncivilized people in the Middle East. Obviously, it's not that, right? People are not innately bellicose, right? There's no war mentality, right? It's about people. We are all humans. So today, let's look at like the human element. Let's see how we can think about humanity, how we can think about how to create lasting peace. Obviously, every airstrike, and it doesn't matter from which side, creates new extremists, right? If your family dies and you see that in an airstrike, even if it's an accident and so on, it's easy to make somebody a terrorist. So every airstrike will create more conflict, right? Weapons fuel weapons. So conflicts typically start because of grievances and because of fighting for resources. They don't start because we have different cultures. So I encourage you all to get into cross-cultural dialogue today, and I will welcome our next speaker. So Mr. Ibrahim Jalal, I said that wrongly, I know. I'm not, it was okay? Okay, so my pronunciation was not so bad, I just heard. And he's going to talk about promoting death, the Houthi ideology, implications for democratization in Yemen, and the responsibility and interests of international affairs. So please welcome our speaker.